Howell Building, and I believe we have someone to introduce, so I'll turn it over to our student school board member, Ashley.
Good evening. Today joining us from Gilchrist Elementary School is 5th grader Brandon Mullane, who is going to be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Some of his school activities include student council and creative academic, and he's also a creative academic student. And some interests include playing baseball, video games, and he really likes to do science projects. So, Brandon?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also joining us from Gilchrist Elementary School is Ella Van Leuven, who is a 5th grader. She is the student council president, a big buddy to a kindergarten student, a creative academic student, and is on safety patrol and the morning news. Some interests include soccer, singing, acting, dance, and running.
Hi everybody. Today I have the quote of the day, which is from Walt Disney. Laughter is timeless, imagination has no age, and dreams are forever.
Thank you.
Thank you. We know behind every good student is a parent or two, and so with the parents of these wonderful children, please stand up and be recognized. And family, any family. Thank you for being here. Also want to appreciate our Leon County administrators and Principal Crow here, Assistant Principal Knight, and I don't know you in the red shirt, but you look like you're a Leon County school person. So welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
And,
Chair.
Yes.
I need to quote my esteemed colleague, Ms. Bowen. I'm not sure I'm going to get it right, but it's your mother who said something about it being a really bad frog if you don't croak in your own pond or something.
Don't croak your own pond.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Must.
Anyway, I'm a proud Gilchrist Grizzly mom. All of my 3 children went through Gilchrist, and it's an outstanding school. In fact, Mr. Crow was the principal then, so he's come back for another tour of duty. But we're really proud of you all and appreciate you being here and taking the time to come out tonight and come all the way over here, moms. Appreciate that very much. Congratulations.
That's right. You shouldn't feel bad because I said crone in your own pond.
I got it right.
Let's start with a C. I'd like to congratulate these student leaders as well. And one's going on to Cobb, where my father went to middle school, and one's going to Raw to become a Ram on the Tharp Street corridor next fall. So I encourage you all to stay involved in student government and continue being the leaders that you have served at Gilchrist. I was a graduate of Timberlane Elementary School. I was a Timberlane tadpole. Mr. Gilchrist was my principal 45 short years ago.
Ooh.
So it's a wonderful school, and thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Go Grizzlies.
Go Grizzlies. Okay, thank you. And even though this is a very fascinating meeting, if you need to go and do your homework, it's okay. You can go. Thank you for staying. I mean, thank you. You don't have to stay. Okay, next we have changes and additions. Ms. Rasmussen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there are none. So you have none to
Oh,
read.
good. See, I knew that.
That's we don't have to approve it or anything, right? All right.
That might be a first.
I
Yeah.
think that
I
was
think it might be for this board.
Okay, well, next we have then Superintendent Spotlight.
We do. Mr. Crow, I need you back. So we do have a spotlight this evening. I've been visiting a number of our schools over the last several months, and we added 50 security monitor positions at a cost of about $1.2 million to the district. But having been a principal for a number of years, I think there is such value to have these adult monitors on our campuses that are unarmed, that work side by side with our law enforcement officers to kind of be extra adultized and to monitor who's coming on and off of our campuses. And during one of my recent visits to Gilchrist, Principal Crow shared some information about his security monitor and what an amazing job he does in that role. And I just would like to invite Principal Crow to come up and croak a little bit about one of his employees.
Oh, croak, that's right.
Well, thank you, and good evening. Thank you, Superintendent. School Board, I commend you and appreciate you for being proactive and keeping school safety, student safety as your number one priority. And making this kind of commitment to not only Gilchrist, but the entire district is huge. We appreciate it. To have someone like Mr. Steverson at every school wearing the red shirt, the security monitor shirt, has been fantastic this year. They know everybody that's at the campus. They make relationships with those students. They know the parents. They know who are the visitors. They know who are not the visitors. Mr. Steverson on a daily routine will check our gates, check our locks, check our doors, check our classrooms. He's visible. He's in the lunchroom. He's at parent pickup. He's at the hallways, in and out of classrooms, interacting with our entire school community every day. Parent pickup, helping students safely get in and out of cars, get in and out of vans to daycares after school, and the list goes on and on. But I do appreciate your commitment to ensure that our parents and our community certainly has noticed what that means to our school safety and our security as well. Not only helping out with emergency drills, our school safety and security plan, you name it, he's plugged into that. And I'll ask Mr. Steverson to come up for just a minute, if that's okay, and just share a little
absolutely.
about the day in the life of what he does, so you'll kind of get an
That'd be
idea
great.
for what Mr. Steverson. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the school board and the superintendent for allowing me to come here tonight and share a little bit of what I do on a daily basis. Thank you. On a daily basis, I am around the school helping supervise the students in their transitions and also in activities that they do around campus. I make frequent campus walkthroughs to make sure that the doors are secure, that they're not. There's no one on campus who has checked in and has their badge present. I'm just an extra set of eyes to help the school run a little bit safer and a little bit smoother throughout the day. I help with arrival and dismissal, as Mr. Crow said. I open doors for students when they're arriving to campus, and I make sure that the right students get on the right buses and vans as they're leaving. I help with lunchroom supervision because anyone who has ever worked in a school knows that the lunchroom can be a little hectic at times. So I just help out there to add an extra set of eyes to make sure everything is running smoothly. And if any special activities are going on at the school, I provide extra security, extra manpower where needed. I check volunteers and visitors and make sure that their credentials are up to date and that their badges are set. And I make sure that all the school access goes through the right doors and through the right protocols. And as Mr. Crow said, I help with the perimeter, I help with drills. I'm just an extra set of eyes and an extra set of hands to make sure that our students and our faculty and staff are all a little bit safer and are able to go about their business as needed. And I want to thank everybody again for allowing me to be here and share that with you.
Thank you so much.
So I think Mr. Crow said he even knows who's in the wrong parking spot. I mean, really, if we could clone Mr. Steverson and have 100 of them in our schools, we could end the discussion about arming teachers and all this other nonsense that's being talked about in the Capitol. Because I can tell you from experience, and as you can too, Roseanne, that's where you get the most for your money, is having people like that that are committed to protecting our children, that are in direct contact with law enforcement officers, trained law enforcement officers that are carrying weapons. But I think this is the greatest thing we ever could have done, was to expand this program. And thank you so much for your service. You're amazing. You're truly a professional.
Congratulations to you, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Ms. Rasmussen?
Just a quick question. I think I understand correctly. Part of your responsibility each day is to help acclimate a roving law enforcement officer who may not be familiar with the school yet.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
right? How many different, just roughly, how many different officers have you worked with, do you think, over? I mean, are there like a core 5 or 6?
There
or
are.
There are
Yes,
200?
ma'am.
No, okay.
We have a core, I would say probably about 7 or 8 who are regular there, some more regular than others depending on the month. But I would say I've probably worked with 25 or so officers who have come in for very heavily one month and then haven't seen them in a while. Just because of the process of how they get to go to the school. But they're all great officers. They're all very steadfast and very up to date and with what they need to be doing around the campus.
And proactively engaged.
Yes, ma'am. They like to work with the students, and they like to make sure everything is going as it should be. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you again.
Can we get a picture with? Do you want to take a picture?
Sure.
All right. Thanks.
We're in the pictures tonight. Why not?
So we have a Leon County Medal of Excellence that we will bring and deliver to tomorrow. Oh, Daryl's on the other end. All right. Come on.
Okay, Chandler, 1, 2, 3, you're going to say FSU, okay?
Where are you going?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, G.
And Madam Chair, if I may also at this time to conclude this the superintendent spotlight. Right before spring break, we had a couple of isolated incidents of what the law enforcement actually determined as non-credible threats against some of our schools, which were very concerning, and especially at a time in our country where there's a heightened level of concern around safety issues, not just in Leon County, but across the country, especially in the state of Florida. So over spring break, I got with Chief Hunkyar and Denver and Chris, and we decided to put out a little PSA to our students. And the purpose of it is twofold. One, to strongly encourage them that if they see something or hear something that concerns them, to say something to an adult. Find an adult that they trust and to say something. And then also that if a student is even contemplating making a threat against a school or against another person, a threat of violence, that it's a very serious matter, and they will suffer very serious consequences because of these actions. So if you would, Denver, play the PSA we're going to push out tonight on social media and then also to the press.
It's my job to keep you and our school safe, and I take my job seriously.
When you're at school, I need your help to watch for suspicious activity.
If you see something that looks suspicious, let us know about it.
Threatening a school is no joke. In fact, it's a serious crime.
It's not cool to threaten your school.
If you see something, say something.
Thank you, Denver. So Chris is going to push that out this evening to let our kids know, like I said, that if they see something, hear something that concerns them, great. They need to inform us right away. But I have zero tolerance for kids that go in the bathroom and write nonsense on a wall or do some of these other things and send messages out. They might think it's a prank or a joke, but it's not funny. It's not funny to anyone, and they will they'll be arrested and they'll be expelled from school.
Wonderful.
So they need to know that those actions will come with serious consequences.
Right.
Can I ask a question? And maybe this is for Chief Hunkyar, and I'm sure it varies depending on lots of variables. What are the consequences for such a thing, and are we articulating that enough so that students understand the severity of their actions, and parents understand how to coach their children accordingly?
Good evening. So in the latest legislative session, the law actually changed. A threat had to be made to an individual. So part of the 7026 Senate bill package was to make a threat against an institution or a school a second-degree felony. So it is a very serious crime.
So, for example, a student who is found guilty of causing such a threat and disruption of everything could see jail time?
It's possible. It's very possible. To the superintendent's point, there's a lot of variables.
Right.
Whether somebody's harmed in that. As it relates to the last incident we had at Leon High School, there was a lot of cost involved when law enforcement agencies have to deploy extra officers to deal with all of the things that come with threats to schools. There could also be restitution involved with that.
I think that's so financial restitution, a felony on your record, the potential for
Expulsion.
expulsion for sure. I just wonder if because we love our kids and kids do stupid things, and there used to be this notion of youthful indiscretion, but I think we have a new day now where we have to find a way to communicate with parents and students so that they understand really what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not a prank. It's not the prank phone call or the of days gone by. It's a felony crime in the state of Florida.
And I'm sorry. And so really what you're saying, to put it in some other words, there could be some jail time eventually involved, possibly?
Yes, ma'am. If the person is charged
Yes.
and then found guilty of that second-degree felony, there could, in fact, be jail time.
Okay, that I think is...
And it's not only, and I had a conversation, the state attorney called the other day and asked us to put a dollar figure on the disruption it caused at Leon High School, where you had 700 kids that were not in school that day. Okay? And so we're looking at numbers because they did make an arrest. And it was not one of the kids that initially wrote something. It was another kid that was kind of boosting it and moved it along the food chain to add to the, to the hysteria that was created around the initial event. So even if you're not the initial person, if you are moving a message along that's going to cause a serious disruption, then you're going to face those consequences as well. Ashley, going to speak to that?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there any policies in place or any procedure for informing maybe even particularly older students? I think one of the biggest problems that we personally experienced at Leon was that no one actually had any official information coming to them unless you were signed up for the listserv, and Mr. Epstein took care of everything very professionally. But as a student, we're not necessarily signed up for listserv because we understand that most of the information being distributed is usually sent out for parent information.
Sure.
But
you and I had a conversation very briefly after the last morning, and that's an excellent point. We do require on staff to tactfully provide messages, and there's always a way to do more and better at that. We wonder when we put out a PSA or have these conversations, the impact. We want folks to take seriously, and you saw an article immediately after the event in the Democrat that just shows how it kind of grows and it becomes more and more of a thing because people hear partial information or they hear rumor information, and that is almost impossible for us to contain. So that's why very often when we put out messages to parents, we want to make them aware of an incident, that it is being handled per our policy, and that we believe school is safe, and that if they have additional questions to please contact us. But it's very subjective. We're never going to make everybody perfectly comfortable, and we're probably not going to communicate at the level of the satisfaction of everyone. So what I do tell parents is if there is an actual event on campus, the level of communication will be tenfold as to what we've just seen. And thankfully, we have not had one of those events. So what we want to communicate is we do believe it's a ridiculous prank, but a crime. We don't believe that there was any information to show that it was a substantial threat issue, but we have to also show that we take it very seriously, and that's why you saw the extra law enforcement presence. That's why you see us put out a message to parents via listserv. That's why we make a statement into the media. And then, unfortunately, what seems to happen is panic grows, and we have 700 kids that don't come to school. So if you look around the state, various districts handle this differently. Many of them keep it very close and contain it, not to create hysteria. But we know that once this information gets out there, especially on social media, we do have an obligation to communicate. And we will not handle every incident exactly the same, but we do take them very seriously, and they're very time-consuming for not only our staff, but the school staff. So we want to make every effort not to make a disruption to your school day.
So one thing, if I may, Madam Chair, that I think you were asking about was it direct communication with students in addition to parents? And we've had those discussions about alerts going directly to the kids because every kid has one of those
And I think you'll see that in the future. It relates to, obviously, who owns the phone and all of those types of things. Once you get into college, you'll absolutely make you register your phone, and you will get alerts all the time. We're just now into a day that has acceptance for phones in public schools. There was a time where we had policies and phones were collected for being out during the school day. So that's moving along. And to the superintendent's point, I believe in the future you will see messaging to students, especially at a very, very serious incident.
Great, thank you.
One final, just have we, and maybe this is a good question for the student school board member, do you all know about Fortify Florida, the app?
No, ma'am.
So, the Fortify Florida app is something that was a part of that legislation, as you know, after Parkland, and I think at the end of that video would be a great place to put both the phone number that we have, our own hotline that we have in maybe a bigger font, and something about the Fortify Florida app, because that's another place where you can report.
So it is. It's currently put out on the school district social media. It's on every school website. Denver has committed to start a series of videos on many safety topics.
Perfect.
So that will absolutely be one that's coming.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hunkyar. Do we have reports to be heard? And District Advisory Council, Dwana Moore.
Yay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everyone?
Fine.
That's good. The District Advisory Council met on March 7th here in the Howell Center. We opened up with a welcome and comments from the superintendent, and he wanted to thank everyone for all of their continued service. And he had some other things to say that were very nice to the crowd that was present. We had greetings from our District 3 School Board member, Mr. Darrell Jones, and he also invited us to attend the retreat that was held, I think, on March 11th at the safety complex. Then we took a moment and we had to recognize Dr. Gale for being chosen as one of 2019's 25 women you need to know in Tallahassee. So we had to let her know how much we appreciate her for everything. And yes, she is definitely someone you need to know.
Yes, she is.
Of course.
As is our board chair.
Oh, yes, student board member.
This is our student
As is our student school board member.
Yeah,
How about that? Yeah.
We are truly fortunate to have all of the women, the three that you need to know, in one room at this time.
That's right.
You'll know
Join us
That's
in
right.
Leon County Schools. We had a legislative update from Jessica Genesiewicz. She talked about some different policies and things that were taking place. Our best practice for the evening came from Jenny Jenkins, who is the ESE coordinator, and she presented a presentation on autism spectrum disorder, commonly referred to as ASD, and that really got the group into a rousing discussion, and we determined that there's some more work that we've got to do as it relates to this area. Shane Seifert gave us our testing updates, and Dr. Gale talked about the climate survey and how it would be conducted after spring break for grades 3 through 5 and each middle and high school. We adjourned our meeting, and the next meeting of the District Advisory Council will be on April 4th, 2019. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we have Abigail Hanson giving our Student District Advisory Council report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Not quite that tall. So we held our last meeting on March 13th at Sale High School. And we began, as per usual, with a welcome and updates from all the schools as to what they're currently working on and what endeavors they're vigorously engaged in. And then we began continuation of Ms. Campbell's discussion regarding the Unsung Heroes Week project that she's putting into action and what different schools might be able to do to fulfill our respective portions of that. We then continued by addressing what we might be able to do as an SDAC to make things easier for next year's generation of the committee. Beginning with, for upcoming meetings, bringing in some of the younger students, be they juniors or even some sophomores, who might be able to perpetuate the committee and be interested in engaging in that. Additionally, we discussed the creation and compiling of various documents for SDAC, particularly those that we utilized for swap days or that we would have liked to have had during this endeavor, so as to perpetuate it further, and we wanted to document ideas that we have created for expanding the project. So for our next meeting, we will be continuing with that conversation and organizing all said documents, as well as discussing any other expansions we might want to make, and I look forward to it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. While you're up there, you mentioned Ashley's. Would you tell us about what you're doing, Ashley? I don't think we
Yes,
know about
absolutely.
that very much. Okay.
So I've been working with Dr. Gale and the Student District Advisory Council to do an Unsung Heroes Week, recognizing some of the people who work in our schools and around the district who don't necessarily get recognized, such as custodial staff and people working in the cafeterias, school resource officers, crossing guards, anyone working in student affairs, just people who really do make our school system as wonderful as it is, but don't necessarily get the thank you from students that they always deserve. So we've been working on ways to expand that. High schools obviously have a more organized student government format where we can host projects such as that. So we've been really trying to work on how to expand that to middle and elementary schools, because we want to make sure that everyone knows that we are very appreciative of the work that they do.
Fabulous. Great
How
idea.
soon, may I ask, are you planning to do this?
The planned week is the April 8th through the 12th.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. A whole week. Great. That's a good idea.
Let us know, and some of us can come out to the schools and,
Great.
Absolutely.
also congratulate the ones you pick as unsung heroes. We'd like to do
Wonderful.
that too. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Abigail.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Ashley.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good work.
I have a question, and I don't know if it's it's for the student entirely, but I'm curious to know what is the process by which high school seniors are registered to vote. Is that an activity that you all do at your high schools?
I believe that I'm not currently enrolled in a government course at Leon High School, but my understanding is that there's one class day where it's an option for students to register to vote that's set aside for them. And I also understand, specifically at Leon, there are multiple clubs and organizations, leadership-based and that sort of thing, that host voter registration drives, encouraging students to register to vote or even pre-register. So I can't speak for all the schools in the district, but I know that we're trying to make an effort.
So it's campus-based?
I recognize that at SAIL we maintain some of the forms in the office, in the front office, and then students who may have missed out on the opportunity in our government classes, which we similarly do offer that opportunity via those courses, as well as occasionally on, I know that this year we did a sort of a students vote concept in the county, and I know that there was the opportunity to get some of the forms at that event as well. I also know that a number of students are able to, of course, when they go to get their learner's permit, pre-register and go
As
via
early
that.
as 16.
Yes, and go via that route.
Okay. Well, thank you for that question. And Abigail, if you can maybe ask your other fellow board members and report back to us next time you report what you found out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would say, Mr. Jones, there is an annual push through the Supervisor of Elections Office and others at all of our high schools to get kids to register or pre-register at the age of 16. And we even have the student voting. I'm not sure if, did we do that in
Kids
this,
vote.
The
Kids
kids
voting,
vote?
yes.
Did they do that this 2018.
They did?
They did. So usually when you,
Okay.
so I went to elementary schools and kids said, "I voted for you." Well, and now of course everybody voted for you after it's over.
Yeah.
But so you go around, kids will go, "Yeah, Mr. Jones, I voted for you." So it's really cool. Even 7, 8, 9-year-olds were getting into that practice, of participating as citizens in this country in the democratic process. So it's really cool.
It is.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, that's great.
Cool. Great.
Next, we have persons to be heard.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we have one speaker. Scott Mazer. Come, give us your name, address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Scott Mazer, 3319 Dartmoor Drive. Appreciate the opportunity, Madam Chair, board members, superintendent. I wanted to say thank you, first of all, for joining us at the beginning of session to kind of promote funding of public schools and making it a priority for this legislative session. And also, Madam Chair, for your time that you took to come down to Senate Bill 7070, which talks about the funding mechanism and the bonuses and trying to transfer that over into salary. Rather than bonuses that would only impact 1/4 of the teachers. As it stands right now, it would take a 28% increase in salary to reach the national average off of the state average. And we slipped while Facebook was down from 45th in teacher salary to 46th out of all the states. So with that being said, and knowing that our support staff are 47th, we just hope that everyone takes to heart what's going on during this legislative session. Come down, join us. If there are any educators that are interested in joining us, that they should reach out to Leon Classroom Teachers Association, and we'd love to provide them an opportunity like we've already done for about 20 teachers. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No other speakers.
If I could, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other day at the Senate, I was really proud of the teachers who stood up and spoke directly. I think that's empowering for them, and it's so important for our senators and our legislators to hear directly of what the impacts are that, of what they're passing. And so congratulations to you and the LCTA for getting people out there and speaking up. And I know the whole board supports you, and, let us know when things are happening, and we'll come if we can.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that too, Scott. I saw the House proposal is a little more palatable. I think they increased the 1,200 to 2,000 across the board for highly effective and up to 1,100. But it would be for all 180,000 teachers throughout the state of Florida, not just a selected few. It's better than just picking out the 4. Of course, we wish that was $2,000 rolled into your salary. We're not there yet, but they need to make sure that we aren't trying to value one person or one group more than they value another. And we're all in this together, and now it's time for us to set sights on the Capitol and to try to, protect funding for our traditional public schools. Although we see the stars are kind of aligned in the, the voucher program and expansion of vouchers, and but that's what we're here for, right?
Right. Okay. Thank you. Next, items of consent. Do I have a motion?
I move. Second, Madam Chair.
So moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Bowen. All in favor?
Aye.
It's been passed, and now we're going to skip on down to item 19. Items for consideration. 1901, Superintendent.
Madam Chair, Mr. Albritton, we're currently in a mediation. When we had a discussion about the situation at Conley Elementary School and the stucco failure, and we're in mediation with the designer of that project, as well as the contract manager and some other firms that were involved in the construction of Conley. So Mr. Albritton couldn't be here. Item 1901 is a 1 acre parcel he mentioned to you before off of Miccosukee out by Baum Road that was donated to the school board, but it had to be used to turn into a school site. 1 acre is not nearly enough land to turn into a site, and we have the owners of the land around that site who are interested in purchasing it, and there's a sale price and a value of, I believe, $3,500.
Do I hear a motion?
I move the superintendent's recommendation.
It's been moved by Ms. Bowen, second by Ms. Striplin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. 1902, salary increases for exempt personnel. Ms. McAllister.
Good evening, school board members.
Good evening.
It gives me great pleasure. I've been before you to bring salary increases for LESPA 1010 and LCTA, and now the superintendent and leadership would like to offer monies to be for our exempt staff, which include our administrators and all those persons who are exempt who don't fall under the bargaining unit. At this time, if you'll refer to your documentation, the superintendent is requesting an additional $1 per hour increase for exempt staff to be paid in one lump sum in the month of June at the end of the contract year, and then it would change the base salary for administrators and exempt staff for the upcoming school year, which is 2020. Superintendent, do you want to add any information?
It gives the details of this agreement in the narrative of the item itself. It should be important to note that it's about 11% less than what the teachers received in their compensation package. We wish we could do more for all of our employees, and hopefully, if we can get some help from the people in the Capitol, and mind our business and pinch our pennies, we can do some more good again next year. But we felt like, again, this was fair and to value all of our employees throughout our entire school system.
Do we have a motion?
Move the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Ms. Strickland has a question or comment.
There's no attachments to this.
Would you bring your mic down a little bit?
Yeah, there's no attachments to this item.
Just the explanation, there was not an attachment.
There's no...
Yesterday, I know.
So I did not realize this applied to administrators, and I'm a little concerned. I don't see any attachment that kind of outlines who this goes to. I thought this was exempt as far as secretarial, bookkeepers. I mean, I thought this was a little more...
Well, depending on the bargaining unit. So secretaries fall under the LESPA bargaining unit.
Okay.
This would deal with all central staff persons who work in HR, who work across the board in any capacity that don't fall under the bargaining unit. That includes administrators.
Administrators meaning school principals.
School principals, assistant principals who have not seen a raise.
I thought we gave them a raise last year.
Gift of time.
We gave them the gift of time. That's it.
That was it.
Okay, I thought there was a financial compensation for them last year.
Their hourly rate changed a bit. Mr. Wimberly, would you like to speak to that issue?
Yes.
He graciously approaches the...
Of course, he does, as always.
Yeah.
We did not give a raise to administrators last year. They went from 248 days to 240 days. So when they retire, their hourly rate will be higher than it was before, because you have the same salary, but you're dividing it by fewer days, fewer hours. So the hourly rate when they retire for whatever annual leave would be higher than it would before, but their overall salary is going to stay the same. Think about it this way. If you earn $100 in a week, if you worked 50 hours, it would be $2 per hour. But we said, okay, you don't have to work 50 hours. You get to work, and I'm going to cut it way back to make the math easy. You're going to work 20 hours. So 20 hours for $100 is $5 per hour.
Right.
So trying to get you to understand, yeah.
Right. I
so
remember
it went
that
from
discussion.
240 to 248 to 240. Their hourly rate that they would be compensated at is more.
Right.
But their salary stayed the same.
Right. So let's say for an administrator that makes $100,000 a year, this would be give me a ballpark increase.
$1,920.
$1,900 per
$1,920.
each principal, each assistant principal.
Every one of them.
Okay.
If you work a full year, it's 1,920 hours at 240 days.
Okay. So I'm so sorry. This was something that was not on my radar, I think, as far as being exempt. And I apologize. I know I missed workshop yesterday. But I didn't realize that group was in this proposal. Like I said, there's no attachment. There's no further information on this item, which upsets me just a little bit. But I know there's been some discussion and some accusations that our teachers are about 50th in the state, and yet our administrators are about 20th in the state as far as pay rank. And I've always been a huge advocate for teacher salaries. And I know others in the district have supported this, but in my mind, this is something that I'm concerned. I'm just concerned about, and I greatly apologize. It was not on my radar that this was happening.
And that's fair. That's why we have 5 of you, and if you vote against it, then so be it. There will be a vote in just a minute. I thought it was the fair thing to do. Administrators haven't received a salary increase in I don't know how many years, at least since I've taken office. And they were last on the list. I personally have not taken a raise and will not take a raise until everyone else is taken care of as an elected official. So I feel as though that this was a fair thing to do. It's $1 an hour. Teachers are about $1.11 an hour. We wish it could be $10.11 an hour, but again, I think for the morale of the organization as a whole, when you start valuing one more than another, that you just open yourself up to problems. There is no best and brightest administrator program across the board, and we have a lot of administrators who have gone 3 or 4 years without. The practice that I did get away from that it had been in the past was a percentage increase, and you'd have a percentage increase of, let's say, 3% for teachers. Well, that 3% would follow for LESPA 1010 non-instructional, and then that 3% would follow to administrators. Well, a 3% raise for a teacher making $50,000 is not the same as a 3% raise to a bus driver making $20,000 is not the same as a 3% raise to an administrator making $100,000. So we did away with all the percentage stuff because it wasn't equitable. So we've gone to increases in hourly rates as opposed to straight percentages. I hear your concern. I do. And that's why this group was last. But I felt as though that we had the resources to commit $350,000 or $400,000, and it was the right thing to do, given the time that they've gone without.
Anybody else want to comment?
Well, I understand most clearly. If you want to see someone's values, you look at their checkbook. And what we've done in this instance is an attempt by the superintendent through this recommendation to show that we value the persons who provide leadership at our 46 campuses.
And district staff.
Quickly. Yes, I'm in full support of this recommendation.
Yes. I think my concern, again, is that our teachers are, when we look at state ranking, our teachers are ranked so much lower than our administrators, so much lower. And please don't get me wrong, our administrators are amazing. They are the reason we are successful. But I think my number 2, when we go back to our retreat we had, my number 2 was, how can we find every penny to put back into our teachers? And in my mind, there was some questions I wish I had asked a little bit more as far as what else can we pull from. And I know, my gosh, I wish the trees were plentiful with dollars in the backyard, and that's not the case. But I feel like having come from the ranks of those that made $37,000 a year to try to support a family and provide for 120 students every day, day in, day out. My priority when I ran was to place emphasis on that and to do everything we could to give them what they're worth, and we could never meet that. And our administrators are making near 6 figures, and they are worth every penny, absolutely. But I feel like it's time that we comb every corner to put into our teacher salaries, and I'm very much opposed to this, and I hope someone will join with me in looking at this a little deeper before we jump into this tonight. And again, my apologies for this not being on my radar. My fault, absolutely my fault.
So I think if I may, Madam Chair, I think I've commented about this before, where our organization is the 3rd largest organization in the county behind Florida State and state government. We're larger than the city, larger than the county, 4,500 employees, annual budget of $400 million. Yet if you look at our administrative salaries across the board, I think you get to the 3rd city manager before you get to my salary. So we are not, in my opinion, top heavy. There are a number of administrators that are making $80,000 a year, and they work hard. But I think again, when you start for 12 months, and for hourly, there are a number of teachers that make a lot more than administrators if you do hour by hour. Right, but to start at our blue collar workers, to increase the minimum wage was the right thing to do. To start with bus drivers and food service workers that aren't getting best and brightest, aren't getting any bonuses, then to move up into our teachers and offer them $4.6 million, and then finally with administrators. But that's why we're here, to have these discussions.
It would be my request that we pull this and look at it a little deeper, especially considering state rankings for our administrators. We're up in the above 20 range, and our teachers are one of the lowest paid in the state. And we know we don't get enough in the state, I get that. But even within the state of Florida, the poorly lacking resources that we receive from the state, Leon County is dismally low. And I know this because I just got off the campaign trail where I said, surely we've made some movement, and I think we've moved maybe 2 spots since I ran in 2014, and that's not good enough for our teachers. They deserve better.
I have a question about something Ms. Strickland's saying. I think I spoke to you about this before. Why our administrators are ranked higher doesn't have to do with the fact that we have assistant principals and so forth on 12 months, where some districts don't, so that makes it appear higher. Is that part of the issue?
There are a number of districts that have a lot of assistant principals on an 11-month contract, which we've kind of kicked around over the last year. We also kicked around the idea, but also most other districts, and Scott knows this, the secondary teachers are paid 7.5 hours, but they teach 300 minutes. There is no compensation for a duty period. There's also been conversation about ending that practice because most, if not every other district, and correct me, Scott, if I'm wrong, in the state of Florida, middle and high school teachers teach 6 classes and are paid 7.5 hours, where in Leon County, they teach 6 hours and are paid 6 classes and are paid 8.5 hours. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm not looking at the numbers to compare, apples to apples. Again, we have a number of these folks, and I hear board member Strickland. I'm married to a teacher. I get it. I understand. I was a teacher. Most administrators were teachers at one time, but I fear for the morale of the organization as a whole that I strongly believe this is the right thing to do.
This may be. I'm sorry. After you, Ms. Bowen.
Madam Chair.
Yes, and then Ms. Rasmussen.
Okay. I'm not for pulling this at this time. I have heard and I hear Ms. Strickland mention her rationale for this, and I certainly agree that our teachers are important and they provide educational, background, resources, and do the wonderful things. I've been a teacher too. We have been in discussion about this, and I think that at this point, I'm kind of ready for us to go ahead and make this move tonight. I'm not for pulling it. I've heard the superintendent's rationale. We've had some talk about it. And it just seems at this point it is the right thing to do. I think our teachers should be paid more. I think they are worth more. I think our principals, I think we're worth more, as a matter of fact. But it is what it is at this point. And when there is money certain in the future and we can do better and more, I think we should. But I don't think tonight would be the time for us to undo what it is I think that the superintendent's team and others have done to get us to this point, with all due respect.
Ms. Rasmussen?
A couple of questions. How many people are in this group? Roughly. Just give me a...
20 principals, I think, and assistant principals.
And that, but includes district office administrators, such as yourselves, right?
You're going to guess what?
There's at least 120 principals as the principal.
185. Let's say 200 is a high number.
And $400,000 is going to be the initial this year, the fiscal impact for this year. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So $400,000. You all heard me say that I want every dime in school security.
Yeah, we heard.
But I have to say, I've been thinking about this a lot. There are different pots of money that are available for different things. And this is one that doesn't have a pot, right? It doesn't have, there's not a line item for this type of investment in our leadership. And I know certainly at the district offices, many of you have been asked to do 3 and 4 jobs, not just the one you were hired to do. And I cannot think of a time in our nation's history when being a school principal has been a more challenging, difficult leadership responsibility and burden, frankly, especially under the school security problems that we face. So I'm not sure where we stand with a motion.
We have a motion and a second.
I would call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor, say aye.
Calling the question needs a second and a motion and a full motion for approval.
No, I don't think calling a question. I don't believe in Robert's rules requires a second.
I believe it does. You guys can look at it later if you want.
Okay. Well, I don't think it does, but I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Question's been called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No, I will fight for our teachers every day.
Okay. Thank you.
But on that same note, although this is not the time for it, the perspective regarding teacher salaries, one of the things that I have noticed even prior to my own election was that this superintendent has done a great deal to tighten purse strings in a variety of areas, cut monies, look at our spending across all of our varied areas of responsibility, such that we could, one, provide the raise for teachers that we did provide, and then the raises that we were able to provide for staff, and now the raise that we're able to provide for administrators. But if we're genuinely going to move the needle in the most impactful of ways, there's going to require a time when we, as the electeds, both school board members and the superintendent, will have to talk about going back to voters to provide the type of resources whereby we genuinely move the needle, and not only is it a reflection of our values, but a reflection of the values of this community to say that they value our teachers, that we can provide the type of cost of living percentage raises that are genuinely impactful and sustainable. But that's going to require more than us operating in what is already our current budget and revenue. And so it's amazing that we're able to do what we are able to do without having to have made that taxable consideration.
Totally.
But so I think if we talk about genuinely moving the needle and moving the rank, then that's going to require the support of this entire community more than just the school board and the superintendent.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, may I quickly add
Yes.
a footnote to that? We all, well, I better speak for myself.
Speaking to the mic, though.
Speaking to the microphone, have been fighting for teachers all the time. We did not just start this week, last month. We've been fighting for teachers since we've been on this board, and we continue to do that because we understand, again, the value that they bring. And so I totally agree with where we're trying to go with this. And I just needed to say that. And we won't stop. And I agree with you, Mr. Jones.
Okay. Thank you. 1903.
If I may, Madam Chair, the next two items, 1903 and 1904, are my fault. There was some misunderstanding, maybe a miscommunication when we entered into contract negotiations with LESPA and 1010 about two different groups and how we would treat the elementary registrars with their increase and the elementary school building supervisors. So what we've done in 1903 is we've increased the elementary building maintenance supervisors by $1 an hour to mirror what the middle school supervisors receive. Again, it's that equity thing, and it was not equitable in our intention to create 3 tiers, but 3 tiers were created. It was an oversight on my part. So what we're attempting to do here with this agreement with 1010 is to make those elementary building maintenance supervisors whole and give them the same increase that the middle school building maintenance supervisors received at the beginning of this fiscal year.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Bowen.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
1904 is the same thing with our school registrars. We did some good work with our bookkeepers last year. Our registrars have been neglected, and Dr. Rogers, Dr. Gale, Jamie Holloman can tell you our registrars. I mean, it's a tough job, especially with school choice. This was another situation where I attempted to create 2 tiers where you would be either an elementary or middle school registrar, and then if you took a next step, because the high school registrar is the workload is significantly higher for some of those positions, but it was to make it equitable between the elementary and middle to put them in the same category like we did the building maintenance supervisors.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Strickland. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. 1905, amendment to the school board calendar.
So also, real quick, also in 1904, the bottom part of it, and I apologize for this, we also have a handful of interpreters in our district that work primarily at W.T. Moore, Swift Creek, and Lincoln with our students with hearing issues. And their entry pay level was $13 an hour for interpreter 1 and $14.83 an hour for an interpreter 2, and we just couldn't. I mean, these people are educated, and they're miracle workers with some of these kids who otherwise would be afraid to come to school. And so as part of that package, we increased those pay grades for interpreter 1 from a pay grade 33 to a 28, and interpreter 2 from a pay grade 30 to a 27. It was also the right thing to do. It was omitted during negotiations, and we didn't want to booger up the negotiations we had with LCTA and confuse everybody, so we wanted to finish with the teachers and then come back. And I think there's like 7 or 8 of these employees, but they're hard to find. I think Dr. Cox can speak to this. They're hard to find. They're hard to keep, and especially with this rate of pay. But they have big hearts, and I think this was also the right thing to do. So,
Mr. Superintendent, I support it. I am curious to know, what are we doing about translators for the Congolese students at the Bond Elementary School?
Translators.
So we've identified several paraprofessionals in our community that are going to be working with those students at Bond as they transition.
Huh?
I'm going to let Ms. Gregory come up real quick.
She's trying to explain.
Okay.
Right. So I'm trying to interpret for her, and it's not going well.
You're translating?
Something was lost. So the Congolese students, the students who are from the Democratic Republic of Congo, those at Bond, we have one paraprofessional in the district who has an interest in working with that. So she is currently employed at another school site. Rather than pulling her from that school site during the summer, they're going to transition over. Which is not to say those students are not receiving services during the school year right now. We provide services.
They're being served without a translator?
Well, they receive services through during any, yes, in different ways. So when there are parent conferences and there are any kinds of formal communication from the school to the parents, we work with Dr. Rogers' Equity Office, who has a contract with Translation Services to provide documents to the parents in their home language. So that's one kind of service we provide the DRC students. The second kind of service that we provide the students falls under the umbrella of ESOL, which is English for Speakers of Other Languages.
Yes.
Within that umbrella, there are multiple paths that we use. It is a requirement that the students are mainstream. So the students have access to translation apps, technology through iPad devices, and then we also have folks working with them in small group instruction so that they can engage in instruction at their level. Some of our students from the DRC have never been in school before, so we are working with them on social skills and on social activities and in naming things. So we are doing things like flashcards and pictographs with the students because that is what is academically appropriate for the students at the time.
My only concern, and this is not necessary, this is by no means tied to this, but since we brought up the conversation of translation, it brings it to brings it to mind for me. I'm concerned, or I would like to be assured, that these 60 young people who are in our charge are being taught.
Yes.
And that although, and as I understand it, these same young people, regardless of their language barriers, will also be tested.
That is true.
And so I'm concerned that we are doing everything we can, particularly when we are an international community by virtue of both two major research institutions, and then even if beyond them, whatever resources we would require to provide appropriate translation and instruction, most specifically for these young people. We all are aware that they are refugees, but the barrier for them is lessened through getting a quality education while they're enrolled in Leon County schools. And so when we talk about translators and raises for translators, it just makes me think, are we making certain that we're providing resources? Although not one of our most frequently thought of foreign languages is Spanish, German, or I understand that it is an African language, but I want to make certain that we're beating the highways and turning over bushes and hedges to make sure that we're providing them with what they need.
So the Congolese students speak a dialect of Swahili called Kinyarwanda, and so we are working diligently to, and as you can imagine, finding a Kinyarwanda speaking individual in Tallahassee is a little bit of a challenge.
I can imagine.
We do have Swahili speakers,
okay.
And we have connected. FAMU actually has an outstanding African Studies program, and we've connected with the African Studies program through FAMU with some of the students for whom it would be appropriate. But for some of our littlest people, introducing lots of change, we really work with them on connecting with an individual on campus and helping them develop their English language skills. And in general, for many of the students, even the high school students who enroll for the first time in a public school in America, we use the pictographs and communicate with them in small group settings and in a way that removes what is already a very traumatizing experience. We try to make it as pleasant as possible.
My last question.
Yes, sir.
Do you think we're making progress with these young people?
We are. I think, though, that progress is measured in lots of different ways. And I think the first thing that we always have to do, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is making sure that the children's psychological and social needs are met.
That's right.
And so
safety and the like.
Yes. And so sometimes we're dealing with children who are afraid to come to school because the school that they've experienced in a refugee camp looks different than the school here. So the first few weeks, progress looks like the student being able to walk into the classroom after 10 days or 12 days and sit in their classroom seat and be okay and not cry. That may be the first step we do. We have students for whom things like color in our culture represents certain things, maybe that are gendered. In their culture, that those gender norms are differentiated. So, for example, pink. Pink is a beautiful color. It's brilliant. It's bright. And so children, regardless of gender in other cultures, may be attracted to that color. But in American culture, if a boy is wearing a bright pink shirt, right? And so it's making sure that the students understand what cultures the other students are coming from. So using that as an opportunity, as a teachable moment in the classroom, making sure that the students are safe psychologically. And then, of course, as with any group of students, there's a continuum. There are some students who are thriving and who are moving forward, and then there are some students who are really struggling. Maybe that they have an undiagnosed disability, or they've had some experiences medically that make them somewhat fragile. And so we're trying to work with meeting their needs there and connecting them with community resources and working through the International Refugee Committee, IRC, to leverage those relationships. In the academic services area, we have 2 staff who work with this group and work with the schools to ensure the students get what they need academically. But our first interaction with the student is always to make sure that they are okay.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gregory. I move the superintendent's final recommendation.
It's done. It's done. It's done.
I thought he was coming back to us for the translator.
I did, but you'd already moved. You'd already.
We'd already.
Yeah, you already took care of it, and I just wanted to give it a little more explanation. So thank you for that. But it does remind me of a story. So my first year of teaching at Godby High School in 1989, I had a young Vietnamese student, he did not know, and there was I guess an influx maybe in the late '80s of students from the Vietnam and some from Korea into Leon County for whatever reason, and he did not know a word of English, and of course I did not understand his language, and so he was in my world history class. And he was a great kid. But we'd look at the pictures, and he'd smile, and I'd smile, and we'd turn the book, and but we somehow we made it through. And now that kid, whose American name is Michael, owns. You heard of Millennium Spas in Tallahassee?
Yeah.
He owns all the Millennium Spas in Tallahassee.
Wow.
He did not know a word of English in 1989 in my world history class.
Right.
So
from your mouth to God's ear.
It's a great success story.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I just say, as Ms. Gregory was speaking, I really thought that was a wonderful presentation of knowledge and caring.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
it
it
made
was.
me feel very proud to be a part of this community and this board. So if all of our employees would follow that, and I am getting emotional, and I'm not going to do it, would follow that kind of caring and knowledge about the jobs that they do for our children, our test scores would increase, our communities could come together, we'd have monies for our teachers, we'd have jobs for our parents, and our communities would grow. Thank you, Jillian, for being who you are. I really appreciate you.
Yes.
And she got a whole $1 an hour.
If you start crying, I'm gonna start crying too, and I'm an ugly crier.
Yes,
so
you
don't
are,
make
so
me
don't
cry.
do it.
Are all 60?
Oh, that was just, wow.
The question was, are all 60 of those students in one school? I know a lot of them are at Bond.
Wow.
60 are at Bond.
60 are at Bond.
Yep.
Sorry.
So we have been receiving Congolese, two groups of students primarily from the refugee, the IRC, Refugee Commission, a group from the Middle East, from Syria, and then a large group from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Over the last several, maybe 3 years, we've received hundreds of students. And so they come into our school, and they are here generally for a period of time, and then move to a larger community in the Midwest that has more opportunities for jobs for their families. Culturally, they're very large families and structured differently. They take responsibility for cousins, and it's just a different cultural experience, slightly unlike our culture. And they come with their grandparents, and they're multi-generational, and so they're 9 or 11 and coming together to our community. And so what they are struggling with is finding work and finding well-paid work to help support their families. So oftentimes they come, they have a sponsor. The sponsor makes sure that they procure affordable housing. And so, yes, there are dozens of students across many different school zones. W.T. Moore, Lincoln, Swift Creek is one group with students who live in a certain section of their zones. And then Bond, Nims, and Rickards is another group.
Can I just ask you a question? And I think I know the answer, but I think Mr. Jones alluded to it. It's my understanding that after these students have had instruction for 1 year, they can come to us completely non-speakers of English, that the following year they must take the FSA test, and it affects the school grade. Is that correct?
So yes and yes. So students, regardless of whether they were in a school or not, when they are an ESOL student, they've always had to take the math test. In recent years, the rules have changed, and beginning this year, they must take the ELA test as well. Even if they come to America on March 30th, if the test is administered April 16th, the expectation is the students take this test.
Even though they don't speak a word of English.
They may not. Those ELA scores do not count in school grades. But the second year in that example, so next year, that student would be in their second year, that student's second year ELA score will begin to count in school grades. So students who arrive in this has been so for years, but students who arrive in America as a 14-year-old, who enroll perhaps in 9th grade, have to pass the 10th grade FSA to graduate, and they have to, and they count in the school's grade beginning in 10th grade in that example.
One of the many things that's wrong with the school grading system, that schools are punished for taking in students, refugees, and so forth. They're punished in their school grade because they're at a handicap, of course, and those students are handicapped. So, what can I say? I think
the urgency of now.
Anybody else want to add to this? Thank you very much for that's very enlightening, and I think it's important that we know this is going on, and appreciate the principals and the teachers at especially Bond that have taken this challenge on and have embraced these students. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Yes.
No idea.
Amendment to the school board calendar.
Good evening. I'll be brief. Per the recommendation of the superintendent, we are asking for a vote regarding the amendment of the school board calendar, making our next meeting instead of Tuesday, April the 9th, making that meeting Monday, April the 8th, here in the school board room. It would follow our regularly scheduled agenda review on April the 8th, which will also be held in this room.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. So I pushed for this to be added as an item. It did not come from Dr. Gale and did not come from Ms. Wood. There's an event on Tuesday evening that's important to a number of folks, and I felt it was appropriate, given the circumstances, that we move the school board meeting to Monday night after our agenda review.
I approve the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? It passes. I also wanted to say we're going to have the Title I workshop, I believe, on that date, on April the 8th. And so we'll have the workshop, and then they have asked to come and give us a report that night, a summary of what they tell us, because they want the public to hear what their recommendations are.
I think that is important.
Look forward to that.
Great.
Okay, we have information items, reports from board liaisons, superintendent's comments. Got anything else to say, Rocky?
Mr. Jones, do you have any reports? I don't want to move it. Do you have a report?
I went too fast. Reports from board liaisons. Were there any reports?
Not here.
All right. So every evening when I go home, I have about a 30-minute ride back to my house, and it gives me a chance to kind of reflect on the day. And as everyone, some days are better or worse than other days. Well, I can tell you, when I leave here tonight and drive 30 minutes home, I might shed a tear because I'm an ugly crier too. But today was a good day.
Great.
So Denver, can you? So let's see, make sure I get it right. So 2 years ago, this is what the gym looked like at Fairview Middle School. Right, 2 years ago, that's what it looked like. All right, Denver, show them what it looks like today.
Today's ribbon-cutting ceremony at Fairview Middle School was the culmination of Superintendent Hannah's vision, much planning, and a construction overhaul resulting in a first-rate gym for which students can be very proud.
Today's remarkable day. I'm here at Fairview Middle School looking at the awesome transformation.
I have to admit, I barely sleep last night. I was so excited about today. This was a goal of mine, a dream of mine when I took office as superintendent now two and a half years ago, to push to make our south side schools look like our north side schools.
We're all excited on the school board and the superintendent. We have been thinking about this and wanting this for so long. It's one of the promises that the school board made and the superintendent made when we took office. We said, we're going to make Fairview, the school, to look like the school that it already is.
Falcons are not any ordinary bird. It is a bird of prey. That means it flies higher and is stronger and has the capacity to do enormous and fantastic things.
Hello, I'm Sharjah. And I'm Samari. And we're from Fairview's Falcon volleyball team. I would just like to say that it's sad that we didn't win the championship in this gym, but we won overall at Fort Brady. And we'd like to say thank you for everyone who's involved in making our gym.
So collectively, we did some good work today, and I just want to thank you for your supporting this mission and this vision to do some wonderful things on the south side of our community. These kids deserve it.
and it's a place that they can be very proud of. Then that means a lot. How you feel about yourself as a person, how you look, how you come across, and so does the appearance of your school. So today was a proud moment. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you to all
Right.
of y'all.
So finally, we saved the best for last. So we had this survey we conducted right before spring break. We had a lot of conversation about school start times, and we appreciate all of our stakeholders' input. And I think we gained some credibility and some appreciation from a lot of our parents and stakeholders that just were thankful to have been involved in the process. I thank Ms. Striplin for bringing this to the forefront and for us to look at this again. And we had about 7,983 votes, and it was split. It was split down the middle. Really, they were.
But now we know.
Yeah, now we know.
Now we know.
It was split. It was split down the middle, whether to change or whether not to change. And folks lined up on both sides. And I kind of made a promise to myself that if it was a number of significance, like to change the Constitution in the state of Florida, it has to have 60%. That if we were at a number of 60% or greater, that I would bring a recommendation to you all to change times. It was not nearly 60% that supported a change. So I'm recommending we leave it like it is. And I met with Manny and the folks in Edgelog, and we're moving forward with a transportation plan that could hopefully save us some money in transportation that we can give back to our teachers next year. So just wanted to share that information with our community. See sighs of relief from several members in the audience tonight. A text message being sent in the back from Mr. Petley to his wife. But again, I thank everyone for their participation in this survey, and it just shows we're here to serve our constituents.
And I just
May I
want to thank.
ask? I'm sorry.
All right, I just want to thank the superintendent for putting it out there. And we batted this around. You even said I think it was part of your campaign. So many years ago, this has been ongoing for so long. And it's not about what we think, it's about what our community thinks. And I'm just so grateful that we actually put it out there to them. And people had very strong opinions, but half had one opinion and half had the other. Now, wait till those kids grow up a little bit and then they go to high school. They might have a differing opinion, but that's okay. We did what we needed to do. And I'm just very grateful that we put it out there to our community. And we gave them a chance to weigh in on it. So that was important.
Anybody else? Mr. Jones?
I'll talk later.
Okay. Well, the next thing is continuing concerns from board members. Would anyone like to say anything?
No.
I would.
Okay. This later. I had that feeling.
Is this later?
This is on a different different topic.
Okay.
Tomorrow, I'd like to invite the members of the Leon County School Board and our superintendent to join us tomorrow at the Gilchrist Elementary School, where the City Commission will be having its meeting at our elementary school, starting tomorrow at 4 p.m. I'd like to also remind my colleagues that I proffered this suggestion to the school board for us to consider, and we have yet to hear anything back from the staff or from anyone to provide us with any insight as to how this could possibly be an opportunity for us to do the same. We said it here, then it was repeated a week later at the city's retreat, and now they've already had their meeting scheduled at our facility, no less, and we've said nothing else regarding the same. So I'd be curious to know when that might be an option for us to find out the feasibility of doing the same across all 5 of our respective districts. So that is my continuing concern.
And may I not delay his continuing concern, but just rewind and go way, way, way back, and just note that had been mentioned some few years ago, and we did go to rallies some times ago. So I just need to put that in there. We went to the Thorpe Street corridor, and so we continue to be great in our efforts to take, as they say, take the education home to these various sites. Just needed to throw that in there as well.
I have a feeling you want to respond, Mr. Superintendent?
You waiting for me? Just one. I support the idea. And I think it's great to get us out into our schools, especially in different districts that are not of our own. So my only word of caution is that I seem to recall the last time we did this, that if we did it in 5, we have what, 2 meetings a month, but not every, like December, we don't.
One in December.
So,
right.
And if you take 5 out of that, the impact on staff is what I'm concerned about. The expense, the live streaming, or however we would handle the media coverage. But our administrators work all day long and then stay late to come here. If they had to pack everything up and take it to a school, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just throwing that out there as a consideration for how often we ought to do it or how many times we should do it.
I agree with you, but we've received no information regarding anything relative to what was said from this dais as a recommendation. We haven't voted on it yet. We haven't decided, but we haven't been armed with the information that you are speculating about. So that's part of the reason why this is my continuing concern.
Mr. Superintendent?
He's not feeling any respect. I get it. So what we're committed to do, Mr. Jones, is to go to Pineview Elementary School on April the 23rd. We're going to make it happen. Is that right?
Okay.
April the 23rd, we'll have our first one at Pineview Elementary School. We'll figure out the logistics. We won't be live on TV, so my mom will have to find another way to watch. But we can figure it out. But it wasn't because I wasn't ignoring you. I was just, there were a lot of other things going on. We approached Leon. Leon has a ton of events going on, as most of our high schools do. We want to make sure it's a venue that's, that can handle us. If it's an agenda like tonight, and we just have a bunch of students who are saying, "God, please let this end," then it's not a big deal. And my staff members, but if there are heavy items on the agenda and we have a large crowd, we need to be able to accommodate them. April 23rd, Pineview Elementary School. Dr. Gale is going to make it happen.
Writing it down.
May I just offer as a comment? I'll certainly be at Pineview whenever the board meeting is there. But when we go to the Thorpe Street corridor, I'd like to have it televised. So until and such time, because I don't want folk to be left out,
I think
so when we look at the expenses and all of that,
we can live stream it though, right?
Yes,
that's what I was going to say.
Okay, well,
so
thank you, Chris.
Or a Facebook stream. I know they stream the city and county commissions on Facebook, so there is an option to watch that doesn't contain. We're on it.
All right, we're on this. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I'm done.
Okay. Are there any other continuing concerns from anyone?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Please.
Are there any other continuing concerns or any new issues from board members?
Isn't there a meeting this coming April for FSBA? Am I too early?
Legislative
days at the Capitol.
Next week, I believe.
April the 3rd.
April 3rd. So I will just remind us of that, and I believe we've been registered.
I got
That's
a
pretty
new
important.
member orientation.
Yes,
that's April 3rd. It is that. Yep. So
okay.
We'll be there.
Look forward to that.
New?
You're still new.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
No.
I do want to recognize students here from Dr. Ellis's class.
That's right, Dr. Ellis.
Excuse me. From FAMU, Intro to Education. Would you all raise your hands and say that you're here?
FAMU, we love thee. We love thee.
Very glad to have you.
Also, we have Lamar Seymour, an intern in the Office of Economic Vitality, and I'm a graduate student at Florida A&M University.
We're happy to have you all here.
All right, and I apologize. So Ashley has been covering education for the last year or so and done an amazing job. She's been such a professional and very objective, and she's
leaving us.
She is.
We like her. No! No!
I know she is, but Ashley, I just want to say thank you of how fair you've been with us, how you've promoted our public schools, and how respectful you've been of the jobs that we have as elected officials. But you're one of the best, and this is, wherever you're going is going to get a gem. So congratulations, and God bless you. Best of luck.
Right.
I hate to end on that note, but I am going to.
My cousin Gertrude. Hey, cousin Gertrude. Welcome. Bye.